The diner's neon sign flickered against the storm. Outside, rain streaked the windows in restless diagonals, blurring the headlights that cut through the dark Chicago evening. Inside, the place smelled of burnt coffee and fried onions, the hum of an old jukebox competing with the steady tap of rain on glass. Jack Nolan sat in a corner booth, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled high. His tie lay discarded beside a half-eaten plate of eggs. A laptop glowed before him, its screen crowded with columns of text, Portuguese in the main body, annexes scattered in Japanese and Arabic. His pen tapped in sharp, uneven rhythm against the contract. Every few minutes he rubbed at his temple, eyes strained from chasing meaning across unfamiliar scripts. His company's future hinged on this deal. One mistranslated clause and millions could vanish. The waitress, Megan Reeves, passed his table more than once. She was carrying plates, refilling mugs, moving with the practiced rhythm of someone who had learned to keep going even when exhaustion pressed heavy on her shoulders. At first she noticed only his untouched food, his restless tapping. But when she stopped to pour more coffee, she caught the faint tremor in his sigh. "You look like that screen's about to eat you alive," she said softly. Jack lifted his eyes. For the first time that night, he met hers. Jack gave a tired smile, the kind that flickered and died almost as soon as it appeared. "It might," he admitted. His voice was low, roughened by hours without pause. Megan set the coffee pot down on the table. Her hands lingered on it, as though she were debating something. Finally, she tilted her head toward the glowing screen. "Portuguese, right? And is that Japanese?" Jack blinked. Few people even recognized the scripts, let alone in a roadside diner on a stormy night. "You read them?" he asked carefully. "Some," she said. Then, softer, "Enough." She slid into the booth across from him before he could protest, pulling the laptop gently toward her. Rain rattled against the window beside them. Her eyes moved quickly, steady, tracing the dense paragraphs in Portuguese, then shifting to the annex in Japanese, then the Arabic addendum. Her finger stilled over a line, and she frowned. "This clause here," she murmured half to herself. "They're not agreeing to fixed deadlines, only best efforts. That's a loophole big enough to drive a truck through. Did your lawyers see it?" Jack leaned closer, his pulse tightening. He hadn't. Neither had his legal team, at least not in the last 2 weeks of frantic revisions. He studied her, a waitress in a faded uniform, hair tied back, dark circles under her eyes, and yet her voice carried quiet certainty. "You speak all three?" he asked. "Fluently," she said simply, "and a couple more if needed." Her hand moved again, skimming lines, catching inconsistencies that had eluded trained professionals. She scribbled notes on a napkin, her writing fast but precise. The storm outside grew harsher, but inside the booth, a different kind of stillness gathered. The fragile quiet of a man realizing his fortune might rest in the hands of a stranger pouring coffee an hour ago. Jack exhaled slowly, relief tangled with disbelief. "You just saved me millions," he whispered. Megan looked up at him then, eyes steady, unreadable. "I just don't like seeing people tricked by words," she said. For the first time that night, Jack stopped tapping his pen. For a moment, Jack only stared at the napkin filled with her notes. His lawyers had spent weeks on the draft. Yet this waitress, in the space of minutes, had spotted loopholes they'd missed. He folded the napkin once, as carefully as if it were glass, and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "What's your name?" he asked. "Megan. Megan Reeves." "Jack Nolan." He offered a hand across the table. His grip was warm but tired, a man used to closing deals, not asking strangers for help. She shook it briefly, then stood. "Make sure your lawyers fix those clauses. Otherwise, it'll cost you." Jack gave a quiet laugh. "You just saved me millions." Her expression softened, though she quickly masked it. "I saved you some sleep. That's all." She lifted the coffee pot and walked away. By the time Jack stepped out into the storm later that night, the contract was secured. Relief should have been enough. Yet he couldn't shake the image of Megan slipping back into her role, pouring coffee as if nothing remarkable had happened. Megan's apartment was a second-floor walk-up with thin walls and a leaky radiator. She carried a bag of day-old bread from the diner's cook. When she unlocked the door, a small voice greeted her. "Mom!" Her daughter stood in the doorway, hair messy from sleep. Megan crouched to hug her. "Back to bed, sweetheart." The girl clung to her for a moment. "Were people nice today?" Megan smiled faintly. "One was." She tucked her in, then sat alone at the kitchen table. Bills lay stacked beside a crayon drawing. She pressed her hands to her face, exhaustion settling deep. Outside, rain dripped steadily from the fire escape. Across the street, a black car idled. Inside, Jack sat with a paper bag and an envelope on the seat beside him. For a long time he hesitated. Then, with a quiet breath, he stepped into the night. The hallway smelled faintly of old paint and rain-soaked carpet. Megan nearly tripped over the bag when she opened her apartment door the next morning. It sat quietly against the frame, a plain brown paper sack, heavy enough that she had to bend down with both hands. On top was a sealed envelope, her name written in block letters. She froze. In this building, deliveries didn't come to the door, and no one she knew left things anonymously. With her daughter still asleep, Megan carried the bag inside and set it on the table. She opened it carefully. Groceries filled the space. Milk, bread, fruit, even a jar of honey her daughter loved, but they hadn't bought in months. At the bottom lay a small box of colored pencils, brand new. Her throat tightened. She opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, a stack of bills, neatly arranged, and a single piece of paper. 2 words. "For you." Megan pressed the note flat against the table, staring at the letters until they blurred. A gift or pity? Gratitude or a reminder of debt? She felt her chest ache with both anger and something else she couldn't name. When her daughter padded sleepily into the kitchen and spotted the pencils, her face lit up. "Mom, look, colors." She held them like treasure. Megan forced a smile, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Finish your breakfast first," she said softly. But when the girl turned away, Megan's eyes stayed on the envelope. Her instincts told her who it was from. The man with the tired eyes in the diner booth. That afternoon, with her daughter at school, Megan took the train north. She carried the envelope in her bag, her decision made. The ride felt endless, each station pulling her closer to the glass tower that bore the North Line freight logo. The lobby smelled of polished wood and money. People in tailored suits moved with brisk confidence, swiping badges, carrying tablets. Megan felt out of place in her worn coat, but she approached the desk anyway. "I need to see Jack Nolan," she said, voice steady though her hands clenched the strap of her bag. The receptionist gave her a quick once-over, doubt flickering in her eyes, but finally made a call. Moments later, an assistant led Megan upstairs. Jack was at his desk, phone pressed to his ear, papers spread before him. When he saw her, his voice faltered. He ended the call quickly. Megan. His surprise was real. She placed the envelope on his desk. This isn't mine. He started to speak, but she cut him off. I didn't help you for money or gifts. I did it because it was right. Please don't mistake it for anything else. The room went still. Outside the window, the city stretched in cold blue light. Jack studied her, something unreadable passing across his face. Slowly he nodded. I understand, he said quietly. But you should know it wasn't charity. It was gratitude. She gave the smallest of smiles, weary but firm. Then let it stay as words. And with that, she turned to leave, the faintest trace of defiance in her step. Jack didn't call her the next day, or the one after, but on the third morning, as Megan was setting plates on a booth at the diner, the manager called her to the phone. For you, some office guy. She wiped her hands on her apron and lifted the receiver. Megan Reeves. The voice was calm, deliberate. Jack Nolan. I need a translator, he said simply. Part-time, just for review work. Would you come in? She hesitated. I have shifts. And my daughter. We can work around your hours. Jack interrupted gently. It won't be charity. I need someone who sees what others don't. The line went quiet, her heart beating too fast. Finally, she whispered, I'll try. Her first days at Northline felt like stepping into another world. She was given a small office, plain but bright, a desk stacked with contracts in 3 different languages. No one explained much, just handed her files, expecting failure. Yet hour after hour, Megan's pencil flew across the margins. She caught mistranslations, dangerous ambiguities, even deliberate traps woven into clauses. Each correction saved weeks of negotiation. Jack stopped by once, finding her bent over a document, lips pressed tight. She pointed out a clause in Mandarin that undermined the entire freight schedule. He leaned over her shoulder, reading silently. Our legal team missed this, he muttered. Her pencil paused. They weren't reading carefully enough. He gave a faint smile. Neither was I. But word spread quickly through the office. By the second week, whispers followed her down the hall. That's the waitress, someone muttered. Jack's project. Another laughed. Translator? Please. She carries a notepad like a secretary. The nicknames surfaced next, half jokes, half poison. The waitress translator. Coffee girl with a dictionary. Megan kept her head down, but the words pressed harder than she admitted. She would come home at night and pretend to her daughter that everything was fine, that the office was welcoming, that she belonged. But when the lights were off, she lay awake, wondering if she had made a mistake stepping into their world. One evening, after another day of side glances and muffled laughter, Megan stayed late at the office. She sat alone in her small room, the city glittering through the glass. A resignation letter lay half-written before her. She pressed her hand over it, steadying herself. Maybe this was as far as she could go. Maybe she should leave before the whispers drowned her completely. The resignation letter sat folded in her bag all morning. Megan moved through her tasks quietly, correcting clauses, checking figures, but her heart wasn't in it. Each laugh from the hallway, each whisper that wasn't meant for her but reached her anyway, pushed the paper heavier against her thoughts. By late afternoon, she had made her decision. When Jack stopped by her office, she stood quickly. I need to speak with you, she said, voice controlled but tired. Jack studied her, noting the tension in her shoulders. Come with me. He led her down a quiet corridor into a conference room. On the long table lay a folder, thicker than anything she'd seen. He slid it toward her. Recognize this? Megan hesitated before opening it. Her breath caught. The first page was in her handwriting. Rough notes she had scribbled one late night, hardly more than a sketch of an idea. A framework for managing multilingual contracts under one unified system. She had left it in the margins of a file, half embarrassed by her own ambition. Now it was bound, typed, formal. The Northline logo marked the cover. The board reviewed it this morning, Jack said. They approved it. She looked up sharply. Approved. It will guide our international operations starting next quarter. He met her eyes. And it comes with a role. Director of Global Language Integration. It's yours. Megan shook her head, almost laughing. That's impossible. I'm not. You are. Jack cut in gently. This isn't charity. You already built it. All I did was show them what was in front of their faces. Silence filled the room. Megan stared at the folder, her throat tight. The resignation letter in her bag felt suddenly absurd, almost shameful. Jack's voice softened. You belong here, more than most. Her eyes blurred, and she turned away for a moment, pressing a hand over her mouth. She hadn't cried in years at work. Not once, but something inside her cracked. The weight of struggle, the disbelief that someone had not only seen her work but trusted it. Finally, she whispered, I don't know what to say. Then don't, Jack replied. Just keep doing what you've been doing. Let the rest of them catch up. Megan closed the folder slowly, steadying her breath. When she looked at him again, there was still doubt in her eyes, but also something else, resolve. For the first time since she had walked into Northline, she didn't feel like the waitress who had wandered into the wrong place. She felt like someone who had earned a seat at the table. The promotion changed her days but not her nights. Megan still came home to the same small apartment, the same leaky radiator, the same stack of bills. Her daughter, Lily, still ran into her arms each evening, eager to show a new drawing or read her spelling list aloud. But slowly, Jack began to appear at the edges of their life. The first time was unplanned. Lily had spiked a fever at school, and Megan, stuck in a meeting with overseas partners, couldn't get there in time. When she rushed to the nurse's office, she found Jack already sitting beside her daughter, reading aloud from a picture book in hesitant Spanish. Your mama's here, he said gently as Megan entered. Relief washed over her, tangled with something harder to name. Another evening, when the train was delayed and she feared Lily would be stranded outside after choir practice, she arrived breathless to see Jack's car waiting at the curb. Lily sat in the back seat, happily telling him about her day, as though he had always been part of their routine. I didn't want her waiting alone, Jack explained simply, handing Megan a thermos of coffee he'd brought along. Megan wanted to protest, wanted to say she could manage, that she didn't need saving. But then Lily's laughter filled the car, and her resistance softened. Over the weeks, small patterns formed. He would drop by on Sundays with groceries, claiming he had bought too much. He would sit at their kitchen table, helping Lily with math homework, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled. Sometimes, when Megan worked late, she would come home to find him and Lily on the couch, a book open between them, both fast asleep. The walls she had built around herself began to shift. One night, Lily tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, is Jack family?" Megan froze. "Why do you ask?" "Because he feels like it." Lily spoke with the innocent certainty only children carried. Later, after her daughter had fallen asleep, Megan found Jack still in the living room, quietly washing dishes. She leaned against the doorway, watching him. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. He glanced up. "I know." "Then why?" Jack dried his hands slowly, his eyes steady on hers. "Because I want to, because I respect you, and because she deserves to feel safe." Megan's breath caught. No one had ever spoken of her daughter that way, not as a burden, not as an obstacle, but as someone worth protecting. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Rain tapped against the window, steady and quiet. The space between them felt fragile, but not empty. It was filling with something new. Winter air sparkled in Colorado Springs, the streets alive with lanterns and music from the snow festival. Megan walked beside Jack, her arm looped through his, Lily darting ahead to chase the glow of paper lanterns. Snow crunched under their boots, breath rising in white clouds. When they reached the square, Jack stopped. Lantern light softened his features, and his hand trembled slightly as he reached into his coat. "Megan," he said quietly, "I want us to be more than colleagues, more than what we've been. Will you marry me?" The world seemed to hold still. Lanterns drifted upward like slow stars. Lily gasped, clapping her mittened hands. "Say yes, Mom." Megan's throat tightened. So much of her life had been spent bracing for disappointment, for things to fall apart. Yet here was a man who had already shown her loyalty in the smallest, most human ways. Waiting rooms, homework, late-night dishes. She whispered, "Yes." Lily squealed and threw her arms around them both. For the first time, she called Jack Dad. A year later, on the Oregon coast, waves broke gently against the shore as the three of them stood in the sand. No grand decorations, only wind, salt, and a circle of close friends. Megan's dress fluttered in the breeze, Lily scattering wildflowers at her feet. Jack took her hand, eyes steady, voice low. "From a diner booth to this." She smiled through tears. Some things don't need translation. Together, they faced the horizon. No longer strangers bound by chance, but a family chosen by trust, resilience, and love.